there Dolly Chops, this is another instalment of my Q&A. I put the call out on Instagram a while ago for questions to ask in a number of Q&As that are going to roll out on the channel. And so without further ado, I'm going to get started so I can get as many of these babies in as possible. I think I'm going to put a little timer on first because I don't have a timer on my actual camera and I want to make sure I don't go too crazy. Okay, so the first question. I just started exercising and I used to have an ED. ED stands for eating disorder, for anyone who doesn't know. I want to stay rooted in my spirituality whilst exercising and not obsess over weight, calories, etc. How do you balance running and diet with your practice? Does your practice help inform your lifestyle choices? I love this question because for me, coming from a background of definitely experiencing restriction with eating, over-exercising, which is actually a lesser-known form of bulimia, and essentially just using food and calorie counting and stuff to try and exert control, I definitely know what it's like to be trying to go back to a healthy lifestyle and enjoy exercise and enjoy being in my body, but trying to make sure that it doesn't go to that yucky place and doesn't end up taking me back into the behaviours that I was so prone to before. I'm not going to say that it was completely smooth sailing. At a certain point, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat there. At a certain point in my recovery from the eating disorder, I did decide that I was ready to go to the gym, and I had a gym membership with a friend of mine, and that was something that I really struggled with, and I eventually had to quit the gym because I noticed that I was using all of the machines to count calories. I noticed that I wasn't interested in any of the kind of cardio functionality that they have on there. I wasn't interested in, you know, anything to do with like heart rate or anything like that. I wasn't even looking at the amount of time I'd been on a machine. I was just using the calorie counting like functionality. I was obsessed with it, and for somebody that had an eating disorder that was characterized by counting calories and restricting calories, I recognized that I was actually going to a room 3 or 4 times a week where there were these machines that could enable me to just get right back into my eating disordered ways again. So I had to be honest with myself, and I quit the gym. I haven't been to a gym since. I probably would consider it now, but really what I'm trying to say to you is it's about being honest with yourself about where your triggers are. It's about being honest with yourself about what you're doing in your life that is not helping you to stay on a good track. And I had to be honest with myself that the gym was actually chock full of all of these little triggers and these little things that I could do to count calories and burn calories and focus on that. And I realised that it just wasn't good for me. And as much as I wanted to stay at the gym and keep going down that road, I knew that it wasn't the one for me. And you have to be honest with yourself about what's going on with you. Whereabouts are you doing things that are unhelpful to your recovery? My practice definitely informs my lifestyle choices and definitely helps me keep on the right track, 100%. And in the update video that I just put on the channel a few days ago, I actually mentioned in that video that in 2017, my blurred line between self-development work and spiritual work is like not there anymore. I have fully decided that anything that I'm working on in my mundane life, anything from any other aspect of my life which isn't immediately seen to be spiritual, is something that I can take to the altar. It's not off limits. It is 100% a part of what I do with spirituality, and that's really helped me very much with things like my my running and my workouts, my weights and stuff like that, keeping my diet good and clean and healthy. It helps me with those things. It helps me to know that that is also a part of my spiritual practice and not something that is divorced from what I do at the altar, what I do with my goddess work or any of that stuff. So I definitely recommend that that is a big linchpin for you, and I would recommend thinking about how you want to use your daily practice or your weekly practice to check in with how you're doing with things like your eating and your exercise, and actually just really center into why you want to get better. Think about the divinity that resides inside of you and how you want to honor that divinity, how you don't want to starve that divinity, you don't want to ignore and reject that divinity. You want to honor yourself as though you are absolutely a spark of that divinity in your own right. And that's why for me personally, working with the divine feminine has been an incredible part of the journey from my perspective. It's helped me to understand so much more about myself and what I'm capable of, and see myself in a specific way, which would not allow me anymore to disrespect myself like that. When you start working with archetypes, like divine feminine archetypes in my case, for you it might be something different, that really plug you into the majesty and the divinity that exists within yourself, it is much harder to kind of go off track with these good things that you're doing for yourself, because you're really acknowledging the divinity within you, and you want to honor that, and you see yourself, you see the shards of all of these different archetypes in you. Even if really you're only into revering nature itself and you know, just the natural world itself, you can still see that the energy that flows through it and animates it is the same that animates you. And I think with things like eating disorders and addiction, that is a big part of the process of letting that stuff go and flowing into a healthier lifestyle. So for me, definitely it's been integral to the plot. One of my journals is actually a self-love journal, and I started this in 2017. It's just for writing about things that I've done during the week to show love to myself, to show compassion to myself, to soothe myself when necessary. And I also record in there anything that I've noted down that I know is unself-loving, that I'm kind of dabbling in. And that's my way of keeping it conscious at the altar, that I am thinking about looking after myself, mind, body and spirit. How do you shuffle and choose tarot cards in personal readings? I dovetail, so I basically split the deck in half and I dovetail it, you know, I do the shh kind of thing, and then I split it in half again and dovetail it again, and then I might do a little bit of the old whatever that one's called. That looks really dodgy, but you know the one. I should just get a tarot deck and do it, but they're all the way over there, darling, but you know what I mean. I do that while I contemplate what it is that I'm wanting to look into. So I'm really meditating on it, I'm thinking about it. And when I do my personal readings, I actually shuffle for a really long time. I like to shuffle off camera for a really long time for my client readings, or like before the Skype call gets started, but obviously I don't want to take up loads of my clients' time by shuffling extensively while they're actually there waiting for the cards. But I love a good shuffle. I love to really think about what I'm about to do, what I want to get from it, or what the client needs to get from it. And the shuffling is part of that meditative process. But yeah, I really like to dovetail. I really enjoy that. I used to do other things that I don't do anymore. One thing that I used to love to do, that I read in one of the very first tarot books I got my hands on when I was younger, was that you should take the hand that you write with, put it on top of the deck, and then just start swirling the deck around on the floor. And it really is quite messy. All the cards go absolutely everywhere. You need quite a bit of floor space to do it. And then just start meditating on whatever it is that you want to get from the tarot reading, whatever subject you're looking into, and just keep, you know. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. I remember when I first started doing readings for my mum and some of her friends, I always used to do it like that, but I don't do it like that anymore. And another thing that I used to do was I used to cut the deck at various different points and make like 10 little piles and then put them back together in a different order. I used to like doing that. I'm going to bring that back. I'm going to bring those ones back. I quite like those. I have asked this on a couple of your videos, but I seem to always post them after you've moved on from them. Have you seen the movie The Babadook? On one of your older videos you mentioned you like horror movies, and this one is all about the idea of the shadow self. Very curious to know if you would like it or did like it. Right, people keep asking me this and I keep fucking forgetting to answer the question. I know it's really bad, but I've noticed on a couple of other occasions at least that people have asked me if I've seen The Babadook. I have answered a couple of times, but I haven't answered to everyone. I have not seen it. I'm going to put it on my list of films that I need to watch right now. I have a list right here on my phone, and after the amount of people that have recommended it to me, I really think it's time that that happened. I saw the trailer ages ago and I fucking loved the look of it. I love the look of it. So I was really excited about it, so I don't know why I haven't watched it, but thank you once again for that little reminder. Thank you for jogging my memory. Do you wear a fragrance? I do wear a fragrance. Yes, I wear Lady Million by Paco Rabanne normally, although I am also quite fond of Touch by Burberry. And I do like a couple of Lush scents, but I haven't had one for a while. For ages I used to wear Karma by Lush for the longest time, but then I stopped wearing it because both myself and my boyfriend at the time kind of both decided that because of the time that I was wearing it and what happened to us during the time I was wearing it, that it kind of triggered us back to that time. We didn't really like the memories that it gave to us, so I stopped wearing it. But I actually really love Karma by Lush. It's a patchouli based scent, and I love patchouli, and I believe it's got citrus tones as well. It's gorgeous, and for a long time I did wear that, but now I've gone on to Lady Million by Paco Rabanne, which I love, and I've worn Burberry Touch and sometimes Burberry Weekend for years as well. I also really like that Pretty in Pink fragrance by Lacoste. I saw that on sale the other day and I was going to grab it again, but I didn't. But I really like that one. I love a good fragrance, you know. I actually can tell what some people are wearing. Like, I know if a guy's wearing Davidoff Cool Water. I can smell Only the Brave by Diesel. I can smell that Thierry Mugler scent that's in a star-shaped bottle. I can smell that Paco Rabanne scent for men, you know, the one in the dark green bottle. Oh my goddess, I love that smell. With women, I can smell that SJP scent, Lovely, that's got lavender in it, because I used to wear that back in the day. I went through a little phase of wearing that. I can smell Chanel No. 5. I can smell that Opium scent by, I think that's Yves Saint Laurent. Little perfume tangent there, guys, little perfume tangent. Do you collect or grow any herbs or use any spiritual water or oils in your practice? I've got a collection of herbs, yeah, that I sort of build up, that I want for different things. If I'm in a witchy shop and I feel like I want to get something or something is relevant, then I'll pick it up. Mostly what I buy online or in shops will be incense blends, loose incense blends. And I'll be kind of conscious either about the theme of the blend or what it's got in it that is relevant to me. I don't grow herbs, I actually never have, but my mum does grow them, so I have actually had the use of her herb garden on and off through my life, which is lovely. I don't make oils, but I am planning to do so soon. I'm planning to start making my own oils. I'm really excited about that. But I do like to buy oils. I'm actually quite a big buyer of oils. I suppose I burn oil less than I burn incense, but I really enjoy adding to my collection. And that's something that I got from my mum, who always had quite a big collection of oils herself. As for spiritual water, I love to use moon water. I love to leave water out under the light of the full moon or the super moon. I also have used snow water and storm water. Storm water I really fucking rate. I know I've spoken about that on the channel before. I seriously rate storm water. I absolutely love it. I think it's so potent, and mostly what I do with the storm water is I either put it in ritual baths or I actually use it in my oil burner. There's somebody here asking me to talk more about my altar, but that was before I made my like 53-minute altar video, so go yonder, darling, and enjoy that. How do you bounce back spiritually when you've had bad things happen that deviate your spiritual path and make you lose focus? That's a really good question. There's so many layers to the answer that I could give to this question, really. To be honest with you, I don't try to force myself to go to the altar or engage in spiritual practice if I'm feeling incredibly depressed or if I'm recovering from something or I'm trying to deal with something. I just let myself flow into how much time I want to spend there. A couple of months ago, I experienced a family bereavement, and actually it was incredible how quickly I went to the altar. The altar seemed like the right place to be. It seemed like the right thing to do. And, you know, I was called to spiritual practice. I was called to go there to sort shit out. But if I'm not called to go there, if something goes on or something goes wrong and I'm not necessarily called to practice and I'm not called to the altar, I don't beat myself up about it, you know. I just think that every single circumstance is its own thing. And I think in many ways you just have to let yourself organically go towards the altar or to practice if that's what you want to do, or take some time off if you're not feeling it, or if it doesn't feel like it's doing you any good or it's not serving you. And I definitely feel like I don't judge myself for going in the direction that involves maybe less spiritual practice or taking some time away. I'm trying to think about the last thing that actually deviated me from my spiritual practice and made me lose focus. Probably changes in my circumstances with my relationship. Definitely made me kind of go into myself and not quite know what needed to be on the altar and what needed to be the focus of my attention and what I needed to be doing. I think normally limbo is what does it, to be honest with you. It's this idea that I'm waiting for another part of the path, and this part is just kind of like a turntable of some kind. I know I'm not going to stay on that bit. So sometimes I just feel like the altar isn't a representation, the space isn't a representation of what's going on within me, but I can still meditate, you know, even though it'll be very difficult. I might not engage in ritual, I might not engage in spellcraft, but I can meditate. And I think for me, meditation is that foundation stone when everything else feels a little bit weird, because I am in limbo, or I am in transition. I feel like meditation, even if it's just for 5 minutes, can definitely just bring me back to center and bring me back to strength. As a fellow crazy hair color witch and someone who likes wacky fashion, do you use color in your magical practice? Yeah, I do, but I don't really think about it super consciously. I just have noted that I love to have colour on the altar, and I'm very specific about what I want. Like, sometimes I know that I just want things to be very monochrome, and I don't really overly think about why that is, but I just let myself go with it, and I let myself have that. Other times I know that I want everything to be very pink and very kind of like stereotypically over the top girly, and I want flowers and I want all of that kind of thing. And you know what, if I sat around and really thought in depth about why I wanted those particular colours or that particular motif, I definitely could explain it. And I have done that before, where I've been like, oh, you know, I know why I want this. It's because of this, or it's because I want to focus on this or feel that way. But ultimately, I've noticed that I'm just a very colour-oriented person. I'm a very print, pattern and colour-oriented person. And I just go very much with what my heart is being pulled towards, and I just let that happen. The other thing is that I do think of colour in terms of correspondence. So if I'm going to be working with a candle that I'm going to consecrate for a certain purpose, dedicate to a certain purpose, then I will definitely think about colour. I think about colour as well when I'm using my poppet. I have different kinds of string and ribbon and stuff like that that I will use with the poppet, and a lot of that will be to do with colour and what that colour denotes, what that colour actually represents. So I definitely think of colour in terms of correspondence as well. I know that you've lived with chronic pain before and all that it entails. For the first time in a long while, I've been emotionally struggling with the rift between my mind, body and soul. I've read scientific studies about how frame of mind affects healing and physical health. I'd love to hear your thoughts about complementing traditional medicine with spiritual practice, and whether spiritual and psychological blocks can manifest as long-term or recurrent physical health problems. Sorry, this is rather long and complicated, but I was literally thinking earlier how I'd love to pick your brain on this subject. You know what, that is a video all on its own. I have spoken before in another video about my chronic pain, which I'll link below for you, about how working with my base chakra was actually very helpful for my back problem. For me, I do feel that there's a way that you can combine holistic healing and spiritual focus with the biomedical stuff, and I really believe that that is how the most success is achieved, when those two things come together. And when we actually respect the fact that the treatment is not holistic if we're not looking at how pain breaks down the spirit and how it affects your behaviour and your personality and your outlook on life. You know, we're not actually respecting the person's symptoms and the person's needs if we are not if we are actively discouraging them from doing spiritual work or holistic healing or alternative therapy. I think that the doctors that are on the right kind of track are the doctors that recognise that this kind of thing is important. There is a lot more that I want to say on this topic, but I'm going to choose not to, because I would like to choose my words a bit more carefully than I think I'm capable of doing at the moment, and I don't want to say something that I don't mean. But for me personally, yes, I think spiritual work and psycho-spiritual work, that exploration has led me to taking control of my chronic pain and shifting my perspective on it. I definitely experience issues with modern medicine, like Western medicine, traditional, but whatever you want to call it. I definitely experience issues with that side of it, where I was given medications and given treatments before an MRI had even been done to see what was wrong with me, which was ridiculous. But I'm not going to say it was all bad, and I'm not going to say that I didn't need it, and I'm not going to say that people don't need it, but I really believe in the cohesive marrying of both sides of the coin. And I think when we treat something purely biomedically, we are doing a disservice to ourselves. We are not thinking about the whole animal there, you know. How do you choose which goddesses or gods to work with spiritually? Do they come to you or do you seek them out, and how do you make connections? it's kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I have like deities that I find myself interested in, and I go towards them and I research them and I try to figure out why those particular deities are interesting me on a conscious level at that point in my life. And then at other times, deities will just come in. I will like see a statue of a particular goddess in a vintage shop, or a goddess will just keep coming up in conversation, or I'll just keep coming by resources that seem to be directing me towards a certain deity or a certain pantheon, or a certain idea, or a certain fairy tale, or, you know, whatever, a certain archetype. And I listen to those callings. I believe in the sacred nature of synchronicity, and I will see that as absolutely a calling. And I will go towards it. I will be like, there's a reason why this keeps coming up. I need to know what that reason is, and I will delve into it. And that's how it goes. In terms of how I make connections, I research and study to the greatest extent that I can. And then I love to do creative visualizations. I love to work with music. I love to guide myself towards that particular god or goddess's kingdom or their environment. I like to go there with questions. I go there with a searching nature and a searching energy, and I see what comes through from that. I ask for them to come through in dreams, and then I pay attention to what comes through in dreams. Perseus came through for me in a dream the other day, and I wasn't even asking for that. That was interesting. And he showed up in the guise of a man in my life, which is also really interesting. Hey Perseus, how you doing? So yeah, I ask for images to come through in dreams and stuff like that. Sometimes I might try and channel stuff by getting into a particular trance-like state and kind of just writing and seeing what comes through. I might ask a question, then channel the answer. There's so many different ways that you can do it. But in terms of whether or not I seek them out or whether they come to me, it really is 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. With my matron deity that I work with the most often and have and feel kind of that I revere the most, I actually decided upon her. I was looking at death goddesses and she kind of jumped out at me, and I just felt like, yeah, there is quite a strong resonance there, so I'm going to explore further, kind of thing. What do you think is the most uncommon type of magic? God knows. It's a really interesting question. I think that I can only really say that in the West, I guess that there's not much magic that involves like animal sacrifice and stuff, you know? I think a lot of people feel a bit icky about that these days, whether they're meat eaters or not. We've just been so shielded from having to actually do anything like that to obtain our meat that I guess it just seems kind of a little bit hardcore and full on and unethical as well to kill an animal for magical or ritual purposes. I was wondering if you work with spirit dolls. If so, how do you start working with them? I worked with a doll once that was a nun, and I worked with her for quite a while. I kind of felt like she had her own little character and her own kind of like soul, her own personality. But I didn't really work with her for any reason other than just to kind of like be trippy about it and have fun with it and see what happened as a result of it. I have done what I like to call trinket animation, which is where I purchase something for the specific intention of putting a magical energy or intention into it, and then knowing that it is always primed with that energy. And that's kind of like having a spirit doll. In fact, one of the trinkets that I use is a little porcelain doll that I found in a vintage shop. A couple of the trinkets that I've purchased to work with, I've consecrated them and kind of just like cleared their energies and put my mark on them per se. And then I've just, yeah, basically funneled my intention into them, funneled my energy into them. And that can be really useful. It's kind of like having a servitor in the physical, like having an object that to you is actually primed for a specific thing. To me, it's not that much different than like charging jewellery for a specific intention, if you like. So I feel like the jewellery's already got to have something that calls you to it as something to work with already, and then you kind of, yeah, prime it with an intention, like charge it, and then when you wear it you feel as though that intention is doing its work, like the jewellery is actually kind of doing the business sort of thing. It was only that one doll, that nun doll that I worked with, that I actually felt had a personality that I wanted to engage with. Like, I felt like it was alive, and yeah, I just found that I did some really interesting experiments with that, and I really enjoyed that. But it was kind of tongue-in-cheek in a way, but it was also really interesting at the same time. I know that in a lot of different forms of magic and a lot of different belief systems, there is this idea that you can invest a physical object with life so that it will protect your altar or your home or your village or whatever. And I really like that idea. I like the idea of creating a guardian out of a physical object and actually imbibing it with that protective energy that is going to kind of hold the homestead for you, if you will. Okay, honeybees, I think I'm going to leave this Q&A here. It's been amazing to delve into your questions. I've really enjoyed it. I've still got the makings of at least 2 more videos from the Q&A questions that I was given on Instagram, so stay tuned for them. They'll be coming soon. Much love and blessed be.